in the very near future, it will be 40 years since John Rhino Edwards joined Status Quo, and he has had quite an impact in live performance and on albums in that time, in bass, in backing vocals, and in a few examples, lead vocals as well. Now, what I would like to do here is kind of give my ranking of my favourite John Rhino Edwards lead vocals. I should mention here, I am not going to be including any live lead vocals that he's kind of taken upon in the last 10 years or anything like that. Literally just studio recordings. Now, in the year 2000, he released his first solo album called Rhino's Revenge, which had one or two members of Quo on it as well. And it's well worth checking out if you can pick up a copy or on streaming. I think it's on as well. Might even be on YouTube. And that was one of the first opportunities, I think, for Quo fans in particular to hear Rhino as a lead frontman, to hear his vocals there. He had performed, I think, as Rhino's Revenge a little bit around that time as well. Those two things giving people the opportunity. He would have his first Quo lead vocal 3 years later on My Number 3, which is Centerfold from the album Riffs, their third covers album. Centerfold was a hit for the J. Jealous Band in around 1981. When I was growing up, it was a staple on radio stations, always hearing it, really catchy, kind of got some jigs in it, and an interesting narrative and a lot of personality. And so when I saw that Quo were going to be covering it on their next album, I was intrigued and excited because the the song and the band didn't really gel in my mind. And then when I heard it, it was an interesting thing because Rhino was doing lead vocals. His first lead vocal, he had the right amount of personality in his vocals to pull that off. I'm not quite sure that any other vocalist in the band at that point, maybe Andy Bown, could have pulled it off, really. But the song itself, like I say, is an unusual song for Quo to cover, but I do love it when they step outside their comfort zone a little bit. Riffs was, in my opinion, okay. It didn't have the inventiveness of Don't Stop, but it wasn't quite as laboured or, as uninspired, for want of a better phrase, as Famous in the Last Century. I think it was just kind of in the middle there, and it had a lot of interesting songs. They didn't really play with the arrangements as much as on their first covers album, but a lot of it was just really cool to hear Quo performing some of these songs. And as it turned out, it gave us something of a milestone in Quo history. So the next track that I shall talk about here is from 10 years later, Run and Hide from Bula Quo. Now, Run and Hide is one of my favourite tracks on that album, and it's probably one of the heaviest things that Quo have recorded in, say, the last sort of 25 to 30 years, because it has sort of a Quo thing about it, but there's also kind of a heaviness there inspired by other kind of heavy rock acts. So I was getting kind of Foo Fighters vibes. And so you have that kind of soft guitar bit at the beginning, which is a nice little build-up. And then it goes, bam, and you're in. And it's quite heavy. The guitar's again turned up, and then Rhino's voice comes in with that sense of urgency. And I have to say, again, it was a surprising thing, but it works for this song. His urgency, his almost sense of panic in his vocals working beautifully. And of course you have the others bringing in backing vocals during certain sections, including, I think, I want to run and hide because I don't want to die. I mean, just the mixture of everything is great. Good solo in that as well. Now, before we go on to the number one here, the Bula Quo album has a couple of other tracks on it which Rhino features prominently, mostly Fiji Time, which features a very prominent vocal during the chorus. He is the one that you hear during that "May we have your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen." That is Rhino very high up in the mix there. But I'm not going to count that as a Rhino lead vocal because Rossi does the lead in the verses there. So it's a team effort, I think. The same could be said for Never Leave a Friend Behind, which has Rossi prominently there with Rhino adding a second voice, kind of a second harmony there to meld in, which is really cool. He's prominently there, but he is part of the mix, whereas with something like Run and Hide, he is the prominent voice throughout, I think. Let's go to number one, and this is a track from In Search of the Fourth Chord. Now, there could have been two here because Gravy Train was written by Rhino, and he did record a demo for the song, and I think he's also performed it live as well. But Rick Parfitt on this album takes lead vocal. So the song that I'm focusing on is the first original Status Quo song to feature John Rhino Edwards as a lead vocalist. From 2007, Bad News, which at the time built up quite the amount of traction in the Quo community. Now, if you're not familiar with this, this was around the time that songs were starting to be included in the charts if they've been downloaded. So you could download a certain number of copies. They could sell in their thousands and they would count towards the chart. And basically, this track became something of a milestone for fans going, this is the kind of thing we want, because it was sort of a return to the long song thing that they hadn't done for some time. There's kind of a main song in there, and then it goes off into various sections, and fans really liked this. So there was sort of a thing on the Quo message board of, let's try and download this, get people to download it, and it might chart, and it might sort of send signals to various places. And it did actually chart, I think, number one in the HMV chart of all things. I'm not even sure if that's even a thing anymore, but it did cause some waves, I think. And I remember somebody actually messaged in to Radio 1 at the time and asked them when, if Quo had been on yet with Bad News. And as it turned out, no, it didn't chart, I don't think, not from my research, but it did get, as I say, to number one in the HMV chart. Which then ended up being played at a large football stadium. I feel like it was Anfield or something like that. All because some fans took a liking to a song and thought, let's do something about it. And it's easy when you listen to it to hear what they were hearing. It had a chunky riff at the beginning. It kind of has all these different areas. There's kind of a slowdown until a great big build up into the solo section. Freddie Edwards, Rhino's son, does at least one solo on this. Rhino singing lead vocal, obviously, with a large amount of prominence and personality. It's perfect for him. It kind of a personal lyric, but also in your face as well. And so, the band firing on all cylinders, Pip Williams production, the guitars turned up completely. And just a magnificent song at 5 minutes plus in length, and one that I certainly revisited on a regular basis. So that is my Rhino Vocals Studio Edition ranked. Do you agree with my listing? What are your thoughts? Let me know all of those in the comments below, and I'll see you again for another episode of the Quo-Cast.